Hi there, today I thought I'd put together a bit of a tutorial on how to actually change the classroom that you're in virtually and digitally from looking something like this to possibly looking something like the one you can see on the screen now. Now, the idea that I originally got for this was from one of the Adobe campus leaders named Jessica Gauchi. Now she does the methodology for this a little differently, so I thought I'd put together a bit of a tutorial on the way that I would do it. Now what I've found in schools at the moment is people are working on the concept of learning environments, and they're often changing their furniture to more modern furniture like you can see in the picture here, but they become a bit more reluctant to actually change the physical walls. Now this will give an opportunity to look at the way the classroom may look and give a few options before you go about actually going ahead and changing the physical walls of the room. Now the way I would originally go about doing this is leave the background image the way that it is initially, and then Command or Control A for all, Command or Control C, and then Command or Control V to paste that copy layer straight on top. And you can now see that we've got the background layer and we've also got layer 1. And the reason I've done that is to actually show later on the modified version, and we'll be modifying layer 1, and you'll then have an original immediately behind it, which is easy to switch and swap between. So what I'll go about doing is making a really quick selection of the white wall here. Now I'm going to click and hold down on my magic wand tool and switch back to my quick selection tool, and all I'm going to do is click and drag over all the white wall. Now what it's going to do is, because the roof and the tabletops and other components of this wall are white or similar, it's going to pick up and grab those as well. So what we've got to do is we've then got to click over onto the negative part of the quick selection tool and then minus those parts back out. Now the purpose of this tutorial is not to make perfect selections. It's not a how to make selections type tutorial. This is a really quick and effective way of showing a what if I maybe tried to change the colours of the walls of my classroom. So I'll just very quickly go over and get rid of the tabletops, the chairs, and I won't forget to actually get rid of some of the whiteboards on the walls there too. And I've got a little bit of shadow there that I want back in, so I'll change it back to the plus, and I'll just drift over the top of that and grab that back in again. I'm not about to try and make this selection absolutely perfect. That's not the purposes of this tutorial. And I'm also going to then switch to my lasso tool, and I'm going to press Alt because I don't want this roof space. So what I'll do, if I press down Alt, I get a little minus symbol, and that'll then allow me to go all the way along the roof line, and I'm just following it along very roughly, and back up along the roof line there, and then just go back around and make a circle around the bit that I don't want, let it go, and it's roughly going to get rid of it. That's as close as I need my selection to be. I don't want this to be a perfect selection. Obviously the better we make it, the better it's going to look, but it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to refine the edge just a little, and I'm going to actually feather the edges just a hint. I'm going to make it up around the 15 pixels, something close, and it's going to give me just a slight fuzzy edge to those selections, so when I then go about changing that, it'll give me soft edges and make it a little bit more believable. So I'll click OK. Now all I need to do to change the colours of the walls, I'm going to go leave my selection active, image, adjustments, hue and saturation. If I simply change the hue up and down, it's going to change the colours of the walls in a subtle sort of a way. But if I click colorize, it's going to create far more dramatic colour changes, and it's going to allow me to make those bright, bold sort of changes that we might be possibly looking for. And I click OK. Now I can drop my selection when I'm happy with the colour of the wall. Control, or Command D for drop. I can switch that layer 1 on and off to give a before and after, giving that effect. Now, in the original image that I showed you, I had also added in some images to the walls, some type of projection type things that you might like to trace over. But you can have a bit of an idea of what they might look like when you put them on. So what I'm going to do is I've already got some images in my library, and in my Creative Cloud library I've just done a quick search, but you could do this with any picture really. I've got a globe. I'm going to drag over and just drop onto the page. I've also got some rulers and pencils that I will drag over and drop onto the page. They create their own layers immediately when they come on. If I double click on those, it gives me the opportunity to rename them so I don't get myself confused. I'll name one world, double click on the, press enter, and then I double click on the next layer. I'll call that ruler and press enter. Now the way I make them drop onto the walls and look believable is by doing a couple of very simple steps. The first thing I want to do is edit, transform, and I want to change the perspective of it so it looks like it fits with the perspective lines of the walls. So I'll grab the corner of that and I'm going to bend it just up a little so it looks like it's along the line of the wall, following the roof line. And then I'm going to go again, edit and transform, but this time I want to scale it. Now if I hold down shift, it'll maintain the proportions that it began with. Click and drag and press enter when I'm happy with it, just to dump it onto the wall there. It still looks a little bit stuck on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to my layers and I'm going to change my layer style from normal and I'm going to change it to an overlay layer. And what that'll do is that'll allow it to drop into the background slightly and adopt some of the colour of the background. And I'll do the same process with these rulers here. So I click on my ruler to make sure I'm on the correct layer. In order to modify it, I go edit, transform, perspective to start with. I'll bring my perspective up a little so it follows the roof line roughly, so it looks like it's going to fit onto the wall there. And now I'll go edit, transform, scale, hold down shift to make sure I maintain the original proportions, move it into place. Probably want it to be a little bit smaller, so I just shift again, bring it down in size, put it into the position that I want and press enter when I'm happy. Again, I'm going to change my layer style to an overlay layer to allow it to drop into the background. Or if you don't want it to actually adopt some of that background color and you want it to remain more of a black image, you want that sort of black line master sort of a look about it, what you can actually do is, rather than dropping it into an overlay layer, really quick and dirty trick is to just drop the opacity down a little bit to around that sort of 70% area. And what that'll do is, it doesn't change it much, but if I come to my history palette here and I say, well, hang on a minute, what did it look like before, after, before and after? It's just made a hint of difference to make it look a little bit more believable, a little bit more realistic into that background there, and dropped it in. But I actually like the effect of it adopting some of the colour in the background and creating that sort of complementary colour sort of effect to it. So what I'll do is I'll switch it to overlay and 100% opacity and leave it there. Now what that gives you the opportunity to do is show an effect where you can say, well, okay, my image, my classroom looks like this. If I change the colours of the walls, we could have it look like that. If I change and go a little bit further with my modifications and start adding some things to the walls, it could look like that. And I think it's a fairly effective before and after, and it's very, very simple. And as you can see, the selections and the process that you have to go through doesn't have to be perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Those selections were extremely rough, but it's given us a really effective representation of what turning this classroom pink and adding some images to the walls might look like.